A quick note before you start the notes on this section. The layer that is labeled stratum spinosum, when I first did the notes, I accidentally called that stratum granulosum. I later caught my mistake and changed it. If you don't want to have to erase or use whiteout or scratch something out, go ahead and label the pink part there stratum spinosum. Don't mislabel it granulosum. Now we'll start going into more detail on these sections of skin, and we're going to begin with the epidermis. So this picture is an up close of the epidermis. So if we come back up here and compare, this area right here is what we are looking at in this picture. It's an up close of that epidermis. And remember here we had the dermal papillae, these little bumps here of dermis that come up into the epidermis. This is that dermal papillae. So we're going to focus on the epidermis now. And remember, the epidermis is keratinized stratified squamous epithelium. And that keratin is a tough, water-resistant protein. So the whole point of the epidermis is protection. The epidermis is kind of like a helmet on a football player. It's this tough outer layer that protects. It's also waterproof, so you're not losing water out of your body. Remember, we've already talked about in chapter 2 with the balloons in lab how your body is mostly water. You don't want to lose that water. Notice also that there are no blood vessels in the epidermis. So that means it is avascular. When you put A in front of a word, that means without, and then vascular means blood vessels. This is also part of the protection. One way this protects you is that it helps prevent infection. If you get infection in your blood, that can kill you. And there are lots of germs. So the world is full of germs. You have germs out here all over the place. Germs are constantly trying to get into you. By having no blood vessels in your epidermis, you put this whole barrier between the outside world that's full of germs and your blood. Another reason to not have blood vessels in the epidermis is because then you would bleed all the time. You're constantly bumping into things, scraping against things, things touching your skin. The epidermis takes a lot of damage. And it doesn't bleed all the time because there's no blood there. If you had blood vessels in your epidermis, every little bump, every little scrape would bleed. So this also prevents blood loss from small things. An epidermis is divided into layers. And we're going to start at the bottom and work our way up and go through the layers of the epidermis and the type of cells in each layer. And one thing to keep in mind is that the top is always falling off. You can see right here, this cell is about to fall off. Your skin is constantly being regenerated. The surface of your skin in general is about 30 to 45 days old. So you're always making new cells at the bottom, and they migrate up to the top, and when they get to the top, they die and fall off. And this is a constant process. Like you might have heard of facial products that exfoliate. The whole point of exfoliating is taking off that top dead layer. So we're going to start with the bottom layer where new cells are being made. And that bottom layer is called the stratum basale. So we're going to use a different color for each layer, and I'll outline the layer so you can see it. So our bottom layer is stratum basale. And there are 3 types of cells that occur here. So most of them are keratinocytes. All these pink cells you see are keratinocytes. This is just a general skin cell. Keratinocyte is just the scientific name for skin cell. And in the stratum basale, this is where they do mitosis. Like if you look right here, there's one doing mitosis. This is where they do cell division. To make new skin cells. So the skin that's falling off at the top is being replaced because of cell division occurring in the stratum basale. Then you also have this brown cell here. So there's one here, there's another one here, they're scattered all around. These are melanocytes. You may have heard of melanin, which is your skin color. So melanocytes make melanin. Melanin is a protein that gives you your skin color. And the purpose of your skin color is to protect you from UV light. So that's what melanin does. It protects you from the damaging UV light. And in a later section, we're going to look in a lot more detail at UV light and melanin and how it's protecting you and what's going on with all that. And when it makes the melanin, it packages it in a melanosome. So a melanosome is just a package of melanin. And then if you look closely at these cells, see how they have these little extensions? Right? And down here, see all these extensions that go out among the keratinocytes? The melanocyte doesn't keep the melanin for itself. After it makes it and packages it, it gives it to your keratinocytes. So that's how your skin color ends up here at the surface of your skin where you can see it, because it's put into the keratinocytes, and the keratinocytes are the ones that are migrating upward. So your melanocytes make your skin color, but your keratinocytes contain your skin color. Then the third cell in the stratum basale is this one right here. So it's this blue cell, and then notice it's attached to this yellow stalk. The cell is a tactile cell. And that yellow stalk it's attached to is a nerve. So this is your sense of touch. So these are the cells that detect whenever something touches your skin, and they send a signal through that nerve to the brain. And one of the things we're going to do in lab is to map your tactile cells. They're not evenly distributed throughout your body. So I'm going to go ahead and explain that so you'll understand it when you do it in lab. Let's say we're comparing two different sections of skin. Each of these squares is a section of skin from a different area on the body. You could have some areas of the body where you have lots of tactile cells and they're really close to each other. So each little dot I'm making here represents a tactile cell. You have other areas of your body where you only have a few of them and they're spread really far apart. So not all areas of your body have the same sensitivity. We're going to do a lab activity where you're going to poke different areas of the skin. So if we have 2 points set distance apart, and you touch the skin with those 2 points, if this comes down and it touches the skin and one touches here and one touches there, that means that 2 different tactile cells were touched. So you will send 2 signals to your brain. And your brain will feel 2 things. So you will say, oh, I felt 2 different things touch me. If you come over to this other area of skin, where you only have a few tactile cells and they're spread apart, they have territories. So they would split your skin like this. They would have their territories. This caliper comes down and it touches here like this. Even though it's 2 separate points that touched you, they both touched in the same territory. Only this one is going to signal the brain. So your brain will get 1 signal. And even though it was 2 different things that touched you, you will only feel 1. Okay, we can move the caliper apart. We could make it go like here and then put the other point clear over here. As long as they're in the same territory, you will still only feel 1 thing. You have to get the caliper so that the 2 points are in 2 different territories. And if you can get the 2 points in 2 different territories, then you will feel 2 things. And that's what you're going to do in lab. You're going to have this caliper that has these 2 points, and you can adjust how far apart they are. You can touch different parts of the skin and see if you feel 1 thing or 2 things, and you can map out where your sensory receptors are by doing that. All right, so that's the stratum basale. And the main thing here is this is where you're making your new cells that are going to migrate to the top. You have your melanocytes that make the melanin, but then give it to these new cells so that the melanin is in your keratinocytes and works its way up to the top, and you have your sense of touch here. Okay, then if we move up another layer, this part is the stratum granulosum. So notice the basale is wavy, the bottom of the granulosum is wavy, but now by the time we get to the top of the granulosum, it's just flat. So let's talk for just a minute about those waves. It is wavy at the bottom here. That is called epidermal ridges. And these are what interlock with the dermal papillae so that you keep your epidermis and your dermis together. This is also the source of your fingerprints. All right, so let's get back now to the stratum granulosum. So this layer is mostly keratinocytes. Again, everywhere in the skin is going to be either mostly or all keratinocytes. And here the keratinocytes, these are new cells that were just made in the basale, and they moved up. They're going to connect to each other. Your skin is one continuous sheet over your whole entire body. That's because all these cells are linked to their neighbors. It's kind of like they all join arms together. And these connections that they form are called desmosomes. Think about the button on your pants. That is what a desmosome is like. The desmosome connects two neighboring cells to each other. So all around, they're forming several desmosomes with all of their neighbors so that they're all connected together. And this is what makes your skin one continuous sheet of tissue. Then you have this yellow cell here. This is an epidermal dendritic cell. So also in the stratum granulosum, you have epidermal dendritic cells. This is an immune cell. Remember, there's germs all over outside. You're surrounded by germs, and you have to keep them out of your body. Well, sometimes germs will try to crawl in through your skin. The epidermal dendritic cell is like a bodyguard. It's there to stop any germs that do try to crawl in through your skin. So if a germ does try to crawl in, the epidermal dendritic cell will kill it, and it will alert the rest of your immune system. This is the stratum spinosum, not the stratum granulosum. Stratum granulosum is next, so I am sorry for that. Change that to spinosum. So now we have stratum granulosum. So stratum granulosum, all we have now are keratinocytes. There's no other types of cells. Remember, these cells are moving up, so they've moved up from the basale, from the spinosum to the granulosum. This is where they start to make keratin. Remember, the epidermis is keratinized cells. So far, they haven't had any keratin. But this is where the keratinocytes begin to make keratin. And they fill themselves up with it. So they don't secrete it out, they keep it inside themselves. Then the next layer that we move up to is the stratum lucidum. And this layer is not necessarily found all over the body. It's only in certain parts. So this is stratum lucidum. So this is where the cells have, or the keratinocytes have, a protein called eliodin. So this is a protein that is an intermediate of keratin. So it's a protein that's on its way to becoming keratin, but it's not keratin yet. And this protein is significant because it completely blocks UV light. So it is a light color, it's kind of a white protein. And it blocks UV light. So no UV can get through this protein. And stratum lucidum does not occur everywhere on the body. It's only 2 places on the body. And that's why this picture is here. The 2 places where you have stratum lucidum are the palm of the hands and the soles of the feet. And if you think about it for a minute, it said that the protein is a light color, it's white. So the palms of the hands and the soles of the feet are always a lighter shade than the rest of the skin. Even people who have really dark skin, their palms and soles are much lighter. So the palms and soles are always going to be lighter than the rest of the skin because of this white eliodin that's there. And these 2 areas are completely protected from UV. You've probably never had a sunburn on the palms of your hands or the soles of your feet. UV can't penetrate these areas. And these areas that have stratum lucidum are called thick skin because they have this extra layer in the epidermis. So the palms of the hands and the soles of the feet are thick skin. They have stratum lucidum. All right, then we go on to the very top layer. All this up here is the stratum corneum. So this is the dead cells on the surface. So the top layer of your skin is dead. And this is really helpful. This protects you. You can't feel what happens there. It's dead, so it can't be hurt. It's tough. It can't be infected because it's already dead. And it's just this protective surface layer. And the cells on the surface constantly fall off. That makes it somewhat self-cleaning because when they fall off, whatever dirt and germs are on there fall off with them. And think about if you've ever had a burn or a blister that tore open. You know how you can see kind of that pinkish, tender skin underneath? That's what it's like if you lose the stratum corneum. So think about, a burn and how you can see that pinkish, tender skin. Just barely touching it hurts. It's very prone to bleeding. You have blood vessels right there on the surface. Imagine if you didn't have the dead surface of your skin. That's what your whole body would be like. Any little touch would hurt. It would bleed very easily. You would have no protection. So the whole point of the corneum is kind of this tough protection that doesn't hurt every time you touch it. So there is the epidermis.